bring up all of the links to any documents that we'll be reviewing this evening. But yeah, welcome everyone. This is the November meeting of the Kingfield Neighborhood Association. Chris DeRoche, who is our board president, is not here this evening. And so as the vice president, I will be leading the meeting. So my name is Sarah Cheetah. I live at 36th and Pillsbury. And I think since we have a few guests, it looks like this evening, let's take just a couple of moments here to go around and introduce ourselves. If you want to say your connection to the neighborhood, and if you're a board member or if you are a community member joining us this evening. And I'll go ahead and call on people just to kind of keep things moving here. So BJ.
Hey everyone, my name is BJ Titus. I live at 38th and 1st. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the secretary of the board.
Josh?
Sure, I'm Josh Martin. I'm a board member. I live near 44th and Harriet, and I use he, him pronouns.
David R.
Hi, everybody. I'm David Robbins. I live on 44th and Wentworth. I use he, him pronouns.
Brighton?
Hi, I'm Brighton. I'm a board member. I live on 37th and Nicollet, and I use he or they.
David S.
Hi, I'm David Searle, board member, and I live on 38th and 1st, he, him pronouns.
L'Oreal?
Hi, I'm L'Oreal, and I'm a board member.
Alice, would you mind introducing yourself? We're just doing some quick introductions here.
Sure. Hi, I'm Alice Johnson. I'm a board member and the treasurer.
Becky, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, sorry, I had to adjust my lighting. I'm Becky. I'm a board member.
Great. Sarah LR.
Thanks, Sarah T. Sarah Linus Robinson, she, her, hers. I serve the Neighborhood Association as the executive director, and I office out of 3537 Nicollet, just north of the U-Haul at 36 in Nicollet.
Thank you. Kenzie?
Hi, I am the Equity and Justice Organizer for Kingfield and Lindale Neighborhood Associations.
Thank you. And then we've got a number of guests. We would love to have you introduce yourselves as well. Dan, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Dan Edgerton. I am a consultant with the City of Minneapolis Public Works, and I'm here to talk about the 40th Street Bikeway project.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. Andrew, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi there, I'm Andrew Owen. You can call me he or him, and I just live here at 39th in Pillsbury.
Welcome. Good to see you. Edie?
Hi, I'm Edie Baumgart. I am a resident of Kingfield, and I live at 40th and Pleasant.
Welcome. Thanks for being here. Liz?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Heyman. I use she, her pronouns. I am with City of Minneapolis Public Works. I'm a transportation planner, and I'm here with Dan to talk about the 40th Street Bikeway. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Welcome. Okay, I think I got everyone. Did I miss anyone? Okay. All right. Well, then I think we can go ahead and get started with calling the meeting to order, approving the agenda and the meeting minutes from our October board meeting, and then we'll move into our community forum. So first, can I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So move.
Thank you, David S. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, David R. All in favor? If you can give a thumbs up, say yes, show us your icon. Okay, Great, that passes. And October meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the October meeting minutes?
So moved.
I'll move, so moved.
Alice moves. Can I get a second?
Second.
Brian with the second, I think. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Great, thank you. All right, well then let's move into the community forum section of our meeting this evening. The community forum is something that we do at the beginning of all of our board meetings. Just welcome anyone from the community to bring something forward to the board. And certainly board members, also being members of the community, we welcome board members to bring anything forward to the board as well. So would anyone like to speak during community forum? Okay, I'm seeing none. So with that, I think we can move into the presentation about the 40th Street Bikeway from the City of Minneapolis, unless there's any other quick announcements or anything I'm missing, because this is not my usual, I'm not usually the one running the meetings. So if I'm forgetting anything, please let me know. Okay, let's move over to the 40th Street Bikeway project. And I will go ahead, sorry, I was just going to say that it looks like we did, oh, okay, Sarah put in there. In the chat, we have a little fact sheet from the city if folks want to follow along. All right, Dan and Liz.
Okay, great. I'll take over. Thank you so much, Sarah, and bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. Can somebody give me a thumbs up? Do you see the PowerPoint presentation? Great. Thank you for that. As Sarah said, I'm here today to talk about the 40th Street Bikeway. My name is Dan Edgerton, and I'm a project planner. I'm actually a contractor with the City of Minneapolis, working with the Public Works Department. I've got maybe 10 slides to kind of go over a project overview that I'll run through, kind of give you the details and a little bit of the background. And then after that, pause, and hopefully there will be time if there are questions or comments or discussion, and would definitely encourage that. But first off, just wanted to say thank you to the Kingfield Neighborhood Association for allowing us to come and talk to you all about this. It's a really great venue for us to be able to get out with the community. So really quick agenda. This is the type of stuff I've got in my slide deck that I plan to go over with you today. I'll give you a little bit of background, I'll show you what the design concept looks like right now, and then we'll talk about the process. So big picture, 40th Street, the 40th Street Bikeway project runs east-west from Kings Highway in the East Harriet neighborhood all the way to Stevens Avenue, so essentially to 35W on the east side in your neighborhood. You can kind of see the who, what, when, where, why on the screen, but the impetus for this project is in 2022, so the summer, there is a maintenance project planned for 40th Street. It's called a seal coat, but the idea is that as part of that maintenance project, this bikeway would be put back for the restoration there. So what that means is today on 40th Street, many of you may know that there are existing striped bike lanes, one in each direction on the north and south side. What the project is calling for, or proposing, is to do a two-way delineator post separated bikeway on the south side. So essentially, and I've got drawings of this, so so hopefully that will help. But essentially taking the two separate bike lanes that are there today, moving them to a two-way bike lane on the south, and then using paint and delineator posts to have some protection, vertical protection from traffic. So there's no capital project with this. There's no reconstruction, no curb work or anything like that. But kind of paint and sticks type of a project. So this is a really ugly map. I've given this a few times and said a few times now this talk, but the point that I wanted to make here to show you is sort of the benefits that this east-west bikeway get us. So the dotted green line is 40th Street, and you can see that it's a critical east-west link in the city's all ages and abilities bicycle network. So all the ugly orange call out boxes are other bikeways, other trail facilities that this will connect to, including the 35W bridge on the east, and then all the way over to Kings Highway and a short jaunt to the chain of lakes and all of that good stuff on the west. So really important east-west connection within the city's bike network. So a little bit more about the proposed concept. It's a two-way delineator protected bikeway. It's about a mile, just a hair short. The concept, as you can see in the photo, is to have kind of a double stripe buffered bikeway, and then you've got the plastic delineator posts to provide physical separation from the traffic. And there's a kind of a cross-section illustration on the bottom. The project will likely also include some very minor signal modifications at both Lyndale and Nicollet Avenue. Those are the only intersections that have traffic signals, and it's just moving around some traffic heads so that there's better sight lines for the bikeway. So the next 3 or 4 slides, I've got just kind of a little bit of a before and after illustration to show you kind of what it looks like today and then what it would look like with the proposed project. So generally speaking, what's out on 40th Street today, we kind of already went over this, but there are parking, on-street parking on the north side of the street. And then there are bike lanes kind of in both directions, 2 travel lanes. And then there's, for most of the corridor, there is an exception, but for most of the corridor, no parking today on the south side. So that's what's there today. And then in the proposed condition with this project, we would maintain the parking on the north side, but move the bike lane so that they're both on the south side, and we have that delineator protection that I was talking about. So that's kind of the proposed look and feel for most of what's included in the Kingfield neighborhood. I've got a few other slides that really focus on, it's a little bit west of you, but I'll hit them anyway. I mentioned that there is an exception to the parking being only on the north side. And that exception is the 2 blocks that happen from Bryant Avenue to Lyndale Avenue. It's that little business node where LaRue's is and the new restaurant is. So what's there today is there's parking on both the north and the south side, and kind of advisory bike lanes, and then the travel lanes. You can kind of see the picture there. With the proposed project, there would be the parking on the north side remaining. But with this project, we would lose the on-street parking on the south side for this 2-block stretch. It's about 19 parking spaces. So the neighborhood group knows we are working to engage with the businesses in this area and the residents to talk about this proposed change, and have gone already to the East Harriet neighborhood meeting, for example. So, and then here's the last stretch. It looks much like the stretch of 40th that's in the Kingfield neighborhood, where we're back to parking on one side today, and there it is again, the proposed concept. So I've got just a handful more slides, and then I'll stop talking, and we can have some discussion if folks want to chat about it. So I talked a little bit about the parking impacts. It removes about 19 parking spaces, and I don't want to minimize the impact that is for the businesses and the people who shop and live in that area. So definitely want to acknowledge that is a project impact. We did do a parking study and found, kind of what's going on with parking occupancy on the adjacent streets and on 40th Street. And I can get into the details of that if anybody's interested. Okay, so this is my last slide, just a little bit on process. Right now, we're in kind of the upfront planning and engagement phase. And the idea is that this project, because it's not a capital project, it's really striping work, traffic control work. It kind of follows a different approval process than would say the Grand Avenue reconstruction project, which I think was the last thing I talked to this neighborhood about, which has a public hearing and city council set processes. This still will be approved by city council in order to be implemented, but it goes through a slightly different process. It's called the to the record process. Essentially, it's a little bit shorter of a process, and the idea is that around the end of the year, we would get that approval or seek that approval, and then through the winter we would do the engineering, and then hopefully have things ready for installation in the summer of 22 with that seal coat maintenance project that I talked about. So that was a lot. I threw a lot at you. If there are questions, I'm happy to flip back to previous slides or do my best to help out. But I'll pause here and look to the chair to help facilitate any discussion.
Great, thanks, Dan. Yeah, questions, comments, clarifications. I'll open it up at this point. Looks like Brighton is your hand up.
Yeah, I just had one question about, so there's a connection at Kings Highway, and then you have to go south a little bit to get to the lake, and there's like that 2-block stretch on Kings Highway. Is there anything planned for that area? Because I do that commute all the time, and that's kind of the worst part of getting east to west if you're going to the lakes, because cars kind of fly down that street, and it has really bad sight lines because of the way the median is and stuff. Are there any thoughts on that little segment?
Yeah, I know just where you're talking about. And the short answer is no, not right now. This project is kind of a, I actually forgot to mention the maintenance project, the seal coat in 2022 is one of the main drivers of this project, but another kind of leveraging factor, another influence is that with both the Bryant Avenue construction project and the Grand Avenue construction projects, those two projects on their own, kind of separate of this effort, are putting in sort of the improved bikeway infrastructure at their intersections. And so all of this is to say, in response to your question, is right now there isn't that similar type of programmed reconstruction project for Kings Highway. At such a time when there is a project, that's what would trigger that sort of an improvement. The city could entertain a standalone sort of bikeway project on this stretch, but right now, I don't believe it's in the works. And I'll just pause and ask Liz Heyman if there's anything else to add on that point.
That's correct. No, unfortunately, right now the ending termini is where Dan said. But we are aware of that gap. And as we kind of look citywide to fill bicycle gaps, we look with a data-driven approach to look at safety needs, as well as making sure we're taking an equitable approach to investment. So we have to kind of balance the needs all the way across the city in terms of where we're making those investments. And unfortunately, right now, we are stopping at the termini that Dan shared.
Thank you, Liz.
Edie, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. First of all, let me say I'm a big supporter of bike lanes. Okay, that's my disclaimer. But what I'd really like to understand is what is the data showing that these cones actually provide any additional protection? I see them all over the city. I see them run over. I see them, there are many bike lanes that are well used. There are many bike lanes that are not used at all. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have them. But I will be honest, I'm not a fan of these plastic cones, and I'd really like to understand, what is the cost to doing this? I realize it's not an infrastructure change, it's paint and stripes like you indicated, but there's a cost to maintenance. Also, one of the things that I am getting increasingly concerned about with all of the bike lanes getting put in all over the city is there seems to be less and less access for people that have disabilities and elderly people, with all the parking being pulled out and removed. I realize these are lots of thoughts, so I get that, but I would like to understand the data that shows that these cones actually improve safety. I would also say that I would indicate that on the weekends, I live very close to this intersection. And I understand the seal coating is going to be done because they just finished a giant project on 40th for gas mains. So they probably have to redo the road. And that's probably why your timing is like that. But I would like to understand what the benefit is to including the bike lanes two-way on one side of the street versus what it is now. And also I'd love to understand the data around putting these plastic separators out and how that actually improves safety. I've not seen it, to be completely honest.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your disclaimer of statement of support for bike lanes, and I think I have most of your questions, and I'll try my best to answer. And then if I didn't get to any of it, remind me. And even if you'd like to have further conversations at a later time, I'll share my contact information and we can get more into it. So let me start with sort of the efficacy of the delineator protected bikeways. There is a wealth of data that shows that it does improve safety over non-protected bikeways, over the striped bikeways that are there. There's a national base of data that shows this, and there are organizations who study this thing. The one that is most referred to is called NACTO. It's National Association of City Transportation Officials, but they're the ones who make the guides for this sort of thing. But even more relevant, locally, the city has recently finished and enacted its new street design guide. And this is preferred treatment within the street design guide. And that treatment recommendation is made by actual experiences within the city of Minneapolis. So if it were a complete reconstruct project, where we're going in and we're moving the curb lines and doing all of that, we would probably look to a different treatment for this. It might look like something like an off-street type of bikeway that's put together a little bit differently. But for just on-street paint and sticks or paint type of project, this is considered to be a higher level of treatment than just the kind of the traditional striped bikeways, because we have that vertical separation. So
what does the data show?
Yeah, and I don't have like the before and after studies at my fingertips. It is there. I can show it to you, but the data shows, so that's where I say if you wanted to, I could take some time and probably find some statistics for you. But there are two kind of driving factors, and then I'll talk about why it's two-way on the south side, which adds to this conversation. The one driving factor is just the additional separation from traffic. So by moving from 2 lanes to 1 lane, we get to take kind of that extra buffer space that would be included. It's like 6 to 12 inches with each of the bike lanes on the outside, and combine it together. And we're actually going to get more like 24 inches of buffered separation. So we just have physically more separation from the vehicle lanes. And then so that's just the space, right? And I know that doesn't get to your issue about the delineator posts. And I understand, we hear about the maintenance and that they get run over and sometimes they get dirty, and there's an aesthetic component. Totally get that. But the second safety point is that with the vertical separation, one, it does provide a physical barrier from traffic. Yes, a car could veer into it and run one over, but there is data that shows that with vertical separation, there is sort of a behavioral change that happens with drivers, and it encourages them to drive at a safer vehicle speed. So again, there is some data out there that supports that claim. I don't have it at my fingertips. It is in the city's recently approved street design guide, and it is in the NACTO literature and research that exists. So I could help point you to that. And then the question about two-way on the south side, there's 2 driving factors there. One of them I already mentioned is that when we combine the existing directional bikeways into the two-way on the south, it gives us a little bit of extra space to have that buffer, a greater buffer from traffic. But the other thing that it does is it makes the intersection treatments a little bit simpler. Instead of having split kind of 2 conflict points with traffic, we get it down to 1 spot. It is a little bit counterintuitive to have to look for the bike in the other direction kind of coming at you, but we find that it's a little bit simpler to create a safe intersection crossing. And then with the projects at Bryant Avenue and Grand Avenue, in those streets, we're actually building in kind of a little bit of a median protection to give it sort of a buffered, protected intersection treatment. So that's a lot. It's not perfect. You know, there's no silver bullet for these things. I totally understand and don't mean to minimize your concerns, you know, particularly about the aesthetics. I know it doesn't look right. Couple other points. I think it looks nice when they're.
They look terrible, but that's okay. We can differ.
Yep. So couple other points, cost, maintenance, access for people with disability, I think is what I got left. I'm doing my best here.
You're doing good.
Yep. Cost, first, the installation cost is minimal. There is a cost, but in the grand scheme of things, and I don't want to minimize the impact to taxpayer dollars, there certainly is a cost, but in the grand scheme of sort of city bikeway projects, this is very minimal. Particularly given that we, with the maintenance project, have to put back the paint anyway. So the delta is very little, if that makes sense. It's the cost of the delineator posts essentially, which aren't super expensive. There is also an ongoing maintenance cost, right? And that's something that you alluded to. In some places, you'll see that they get hit by cars and then somebody's got to go out there and put them back up. That's something that we have to kind of live with, and rely on the neighborhoods to tell us when that happens, and then city forces get out and do it as soon as they can, given their other responsibilities. So that's the short answer. And then finally, access for people with disabilities is kind of I've kind of split thoughts on that. With this treatment, we're not, at least for all of the 1 mile besides that 2 blocks, we're not losing parking. One benefit to this paint and sticks type of a treatment over some of the more permanent treatments, like for instance, I'm thinking of, there's Plymouth Avenue on the north side of town. If anybody's familiar, a few years ago, we added floating curbs with delineator posts, which I think would be a good treatment here as well. But as the current proposal sits, that's not there. So there's not that sort of physical barrier that somebody with a disability or who's less able would have to contend with. And if we did have that type of separation, you put breaks and gaps in it, and you try to work with adjacent property owners to understand where those needs are. Access for people with disabilities in the areas where we're losing parking, it's a trade-off that comes with a project decision like this, and the rationale for the trade-off is set by city policy decision, and it's the city's transportation action plan, which includes the All Ages and Abilities Network, that sets sort of this policy trade-off in motion. So again, not perfect, but balancing the needs of all users is sort of a difficult task, and that's what we're trying to do.
So one other
Thank
question.
you.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Edie, can we move ahead to some other folks? There's some other folks in line.
Sure.
Can we circle back?
And then let them speak. I would just like to ask if you've considered access from the alleys into the street. I think that could be very dangerous. And then thank you. I will let you move on.
Yep.
I think too, just for the sake of time, if there are some additional comments too, we could put them in the chat and make sure that those questions and comments get captured too for the city.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And Edie, feel free to give me a call or email me. My contact information's on the screen.
Thank you.
Yes, yep, it's open for alleys. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Sarah.
It's okay. All right, can we move on to Andrew? I think we're going to go a little bit over on this topic, but we've got a little bit of wiggle room in our agenda tonight. So let's keep moving through some questions here. Andrew?
Sure. I hope that mine are brief. I'm really curious about intersections and turning movements. In particular, like if you could talk through what's the expected movement, for example, for a westbound cyclist who's turning right onto Grand, or an eastbound cyclist who's turning left onto Grand. And then also at Lyndale, I'm curious how the signalization is going to work out. For example, for a westbound driver who's turning left, how are they across the two-way bikeway? I'm curious how that interaction will work out.
Yeah, thank you. Not a simple question, Andrew, but that's
Well,
okay.
if there's a place I can look for this, I just feel like lots of times it's always just about what's on the block, and then so
intersections are where it gets hard. That's where the conflict points are, and that's where crashes happen, right? So the short answer is that how do the awkward bikeway movements happen? Generally speaking, at both the signalized and non-signalized intersections, it's a two-stage turning movement. So you would make the crossing, you'd kind of get over, reposition your bike, and then you'd cross north-south. So that's kind of how it works. In some places in the city and throughout the country, there are bike signals. We're not going to have those here. It's not going to have the separate signal heads for bikes. For how our vehicle is going to know what's happening on Lyndale and on Nicollet, there will be new signal arm placement. So today the signal arms face only the cross street. So the signal arm just goes across Lyndale, and then the signal is just on the post at 40th Street. There will be a new kind of arm that goes out and puts a signal out there. That's not going to help necessarily that vehicle who's going to have to make the left turn westbound and cross the bike lane, but there will be signage and it will be marked. It'll have the green paint. It'll have all of that kind of treatment. So it's a risk, but it's less of a conflict, one less conflict point than the condition that exists today. So again, I'm happy to, Andrew, to chat more about it. And I would refer you to the city's facility design guide, which has drawings of how all of those movements work. The city's street design guide. You can Google Minneapolis Street Design Guide, or you can email me and I can send you a link.
Great, thanks.
Sarah, LR.
Thanks. Two quick questions, Dan. I think it was the third slide from the end. You mentioned a parking study, and I think that slide said that it's close to capacity on weekends, nights, and evenings.
Yeah, for that. So let me explain it a little bit. The way we do parking studies is we go out, and they're not perfect. They represent a snapshot in time, but we go out and we just do counts, right? So we'll go to the field and we'll count how many cars are there, and then we'll compare that to the amount of parking capacity that is theoretically there. So we know about how many cars will fit on a block face. We do those counts at different times of day and different days of the week, so that we sort of get that representative snapshot of what's happening in the area. So we did them morning, afternoon, midday, evening, weekday evening, and weekend midday. So those were the different time slots. So the part that was close to capacity, noon, evening, and weekend, is that 2-block stretch along 40th Street near the business nodes. So it's like the fertility clinic that's there, the customers who park there. It was generally 80% occupied. So there was maybe a spot or two, but it's pretty full during those peak periods. And then what the rest of the point was is we also counted the adjacent blocks. So it's not ideal, right? We talked about somebody who might have a disability, not able to walk as far. But we did note that there does appear to be some capacity on the adjacent side streets.
And so let me just clarify that you did not find anything close to capacity anywhere else along 40th Street.
There were a few, not along 40th Street, no. And in fact, we didn't count anywhere else on 40th Street. So the places that we counted are the places shown on this map. So it was 40th Street from Colfax over to Lyndale, and then it was 1 block in each direction on the cross streets, including Lyndale.
But the reason we counted in those locations, right, Dan, is because there's no parking impacts for the rest of the corridor?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the parking, the supply of, we're not fiddling with the parking supply in the other areas.
And did you do that since the restaurant opened on the corner of 40th and Lyndale?
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks ago. Now the restaurant probably isn't and wasn't up to full capacity and kind of up and running. And there is going to be a parking strain there. I will note, although it's small, they do have a parking lot and a valet service. So it's kind of typical South Minneapolis business node in that regard.
Okay, and then a quick question on the other end. You didn't talk at all about between Nicollet and the 40th Street pedestrian bridge. I know that there's a challenging crossover from the bridge to the north side of the street right now. How are you looking at directing people onto the bridge and protecting them from cars going around that Stevens corner? Yeah.
Kind of this area over here. Yeah,
and that's an area that the neighborhood association is going to start doing a gateway planning for also within the next couple of months. So I think that we're going to want to be in touch with you about how those two things connect.
Yeah, we would love to kind of coordinate on the work that you're doing there. The Bikeway project will essentially end on 40th Street at Stevens. So, you know, there will be the usual signage that makes that connection. But, you know, maybe, you know, the honest answer is it's a detail that we haven't completely figured out yet and got to take a closer look at. We're still kind of, next phase is to work through all of the design details, and we're just not quite there yet.
Thank you.
I have some comments and I'll try to be brief. First of all, a thank you for the 40th and Grand intersection. Those bikeways, those intersections right there are great with the protected and raised sidewalks. So thank you. Next, a suggestion for further engagement if you haven't already. So just to provide some context, 40th is a major thoroughfare for Kingfield, particularly kids going to our new community school over at Barton in East Harriet. And so all kids who are going to that school need to cross over at, you know, one of these stoplights here along Lyndale, and 40th is a main one. And so I think this is a great opportunity to increase bike and pedestrian safety, especially for those kids. We are experiencing a bus shortage in the city. And so I think more families want to bike, but right now it's still not super safe for our kids to do that. And so I think further engagement, Barton School families, as well as the Bryant Neighborhood Association, because all of Bryant neighborhood also goes over to Barton School. So those kids over in Bryant have to cross 35W, Nicollet, Lyndale to get over to Barton. And then I'm wondering, because this is potentially a route to school, if there might be additional funds through Safe Routes to School to do some enhanced protections. And then I would also ask if there can be, I mean, I would love to see curb protected bike lanes rather than the posts for, you know, points that folks have already made about them getting knocked over really quickly. And so could additional funding from Safe Routes be put into something like that? And then also, could we do more protected intersections around Lyndale and Nicollet? And I don't need answers to that right now, but those are just some considerations that I hope that we can continue talking about from now until the end of the year.
Yeah, thank you. I particularly love the comments about the Safe Routes to School and the kids, you know, the additional outreach to families and kids. And I love that idea. It's a little bit more complicated when it comes to Safe Routes to School funding, insofar as the city has to look at it at a citywide sort of prioritization, but it's not something to rule out. And yes, I'll shake whatever trees we can to try to find the funds to do the raised floating curb kind of protection. But so far, that's not part of this project.
Yeah, unfortunately, our Safe Routes to School budget is already programmed out for definitely set for the next at least 5 years. We have some federal projects that where we leverage our local funding to match other projects that are scheduled out already. And so unfortunately, those funds have been maxed out within the city at this time. We do understand that the curb protected is an upgrade where we put in that concrete curb instead of the delineators. Given that this was, an opportunity-driven project that came with a seal coat associated with that, big gas main project, we decided to be able to do a quick build project here and went with the cheaper delineators. However, we are working across the city to upgrade those delineated bikeways to curb protected. So this quarter will be, on that list when we start to look at other opportunities where funding comes up to put in the curbs. But unfortunately, right now, given the quick nature and turnaround of this project, we don't have funds available for next year to put in those type of enhancements along with just the project that's happening next year.
Thank you. Are there any last questions or comments before we move on? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dan and Liz, and for the questions and comments from the group. Is there going to be a, just in terms of how additional neighbors can provide feedback, is there a survey out right now, or should people just email you with feedback? What's the best way for more people to learn about this and to weigh in on this?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is no survey, but people can contact me directly, and there is a project website that has, the link to email comments, and that's on the screen. So that's the best way, is to reach out directly.
Thank you.
One quick question before you go, just to clarify funding. I thought that 40th Street was a county road. Is a county? It's not?
No, it's not.
Okay, I'm wrong then.
No, would have been a good question. Makes things more complicated, but yep. Well, I want to again thank you. I know we went over, but thank you to the committee for allowing us to come, and thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or if you need to get going, we understand that too.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Thanks. All right. And that goes for everyone. Everyone is welcome to stay. Our meetings are open to the public every month. Okay, Sarah, LR, I'm going to turn it over to you for overview and adoption of required policies. You're on mute.
Just saw that. I thought you had put your name on that on the agenda, Sarah.
For this one, no.
Okay. Oh, the new policies. Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Wrong place in the agenda. So there were 2 new policies that were put into your guys' packets. This is part of the new city requirements for neighborhood associations taking funds from the City of Minneapolis. One is a language access policy. One is a whistleblower policy. They're both pretty straightforward. They're both pretty short. The draft language of them started with the nonprofit lawyer that we have worked with in the past. And what I tried to do was separate out a policy statement from a procedure statement. This leads into the next sort of conversation on our agenda, but being really clear about we have a policy about what the organization believes in, and then we have a number of steps that we take to enact that. So the whistleblower policy is basically a protection for people who come out with concerns about something that the neighborhood association is doing, or staff or people, in a protection for them to not have their conversation held against them. And the language access policy is also being mandated by the city. It's a very boiled down version of actually a state requirement that's hinged to state funding that we don't qualify for. And basically it says that we will review who lives in the neighborhood every 2 years using census data or something similar. And based upon that, make a judgment about if notices and meetings need to be published in another language. And beyond that, we will make an attempt to make sure that everybody in the neighborhood knows that they are welcome to participate in neighborhood association activities. And if people need language access at a meeting, it basically gives us a freedom to allow us to casually interpret rather than hiring someone to do so. Just so people know, we've gone through the numbers of the census. None of the populations in Kingfield triggered the need for providing anything in 2 languages or 3 languages at this time. So it's just something that we will keep monitoring. Are there questions?
Sarah, can you just clarify, is this something that the board needs to approve tonight or we'll be voting on?
You could approve it tonight. It doesn't actually need to be to the city until December. It's part of our whole package of application for funds, but they gave us a little bit of a grace period to sort of get things through.
Is there a date in December that it's due? Our next board meeting is on the 8th of December.
I'm sure, I think it's by the end of the year. The whistleblower policy, I'll say, is also duplicated somewhat, but without the same title in our, like in our grievance procedure. You know, so there's the buildup of policies has a little bit of overlap in them currently.
Questions, comments?
Are people prepared to vote on this tonight? Could we use the gradients that we've done in past meetings about how prepared or how good people feel about voting on these 2, or if they need more time until the next board meeting?
I like that idea. Do people, so just for reference, in the past, we've kind of done a 1 no, 5 yes, and then, you know, in between, depending on what you're thinking. So I guess the question, to what extent do you want to vote on these tonight? 1 being, no, I do not want to. 5 being, yes, definitely, I want to. Okay. Did anyone, David S., were you holding your hand up? I didn't quite catch which number you had up. You're a 5. Cool. Okay, then let's see.
Most people I saw felt comfortable voting, so.
So then do we need to vote on each one separately, Sarah? Do we need a motion for each?
Someone should just put a motion forward. For one or the other or both.
I move that we vote to approve.
Both of them?
Both of them.
Okay. So David S. has made a motion to approve both of these policies.
I'll second.
Thank you, Alice. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, thumbs up or give us an eye. Did you get that, BJ? Okay. Any no votes? Abstentions? Okay, those both pass. Anything else with that, Sarah, or is that it? That's it? Okay.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so moving into the next agenda item here, planning for positions, policy procedures discussion at December board meeting. So when the executive committee met last, which was, I think, a couple weeks ago now, we talked about wanting to take some time to do a debrief of position taking at an upcoming board meeting. So to give some context about position taking, discuss how that influences or how that might impact policies that we might want to create around position taking or procedures around position taking, give an overview of what those guidelines are, as well as some information on past positions that Kfna has taken and how those positions have been used or how they've been communicated or what the impact has been. Talk a little bit about some administrative logistics. So things like when we take positions, where do they get stored? Is that on our Google Drive? Is it on our website, etc.? Effective dates. I think most positions have been for a particular project or a particular amendment or something like that. But is there a need to be really specific about the effective dates of those positions and make sure that that's part of that process? And then we also just want to give some space and time for people to debrief and share thoughts on position taking and what's gone well in the past, what can be improved, as well as what type of resources or guidelines might we need to create for the future to be really clear about any sort of follow-up that gets taken because of the position's communication plan, et cetera. So that is what we're planning for the board meeting in December, that discussion, but we want to hear from people what's missing from this list. What do people want to know? What do people want to discuss as part of this conversation next month? So I'll just open it up for questions, comments.
I want to add a resource into the chat for you also, as I've been trying to twist my head around these different things, policies and procedures and positions. This was just a really interesting reading that I've found a couple times now as I've sort of gone through this with you over the last year, that I would just encourage you to read. It gives an example of a position policy, and it gives procedures for how a position is taken in it. And I'm not saying that this is the way that you have to take a position, but I think that it's an interesting way of laying it out. So I guess I would ask that everyone just take a look at this and think about how does the board come to an important policy decision in the future? And then also then think about how is that shared? What are the procedures for sharing that with the community? So.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or resources that we should be thinking about with this topic? Okay, I'm seeing none. So I think if anybody has thoughts about this, certainly feel free to reach out to anyone on the executive committee. Otherwise, plan that we will have this discussion at our December board meeting. Cool. All right. So moving along here, we've got Kfna Community Visioning Survey presentation. I'm not 100% sure who's presenting this, so please, whoever it is, go for it.
Yeah, that's me. Do I have sharing the share screen capability? I think so. Okay.
Yep, it's pulled up.
Okay, awesome. First, I'm just gonna have a lot of links here. So I made, oh shoot, how do I go to chat? You think I'd be good at this after a year of online classes? Okay, so I have made a PowerPoint going over the survey results of the past 5 months it's been out. And oops, that was sure. Not that we are done with the survey, although I'm not positive we are or not.
Mackenzie, we just see a white screen.
Can you guys see this now?
Nope, just a white screen.
Uh-oh. Okay, let's try again. Share screen. Okay, got it. All right, sorry about that. Can you see that now? All right, awesome. So, yeah, so I put the links in the chat. Let me know if you can't access them. There's a lot of different links, but the first one is to this PowerPoint if you want to look at it after I present. And then there's also a link to the actual survey results. It's an Excel spreadsheet. So you can go and look through the responses yourself. And then there's some links to the results of my door knocking, and then what block contact leaders are interested in. So lots of links. You can also find them under the Kfna Google Drive and then under my folder. And I can email them out as well. But this is a short PowerPoint of the survey and the results that I found sifting through it. I want to disclose that this is just my perspective of sifting through it. So other people going through the results may notice other things, but this is what I noticed and the data that I gathered. So first of all, so far, the demographics of respondents, 85.8% of respondents have been homeowners. So the vast majority, which I think reflects Kingfield's. I'm actually not positive about that. Sarah would know better. But we did have 12.1% of respondents that are renters and 4.9% that are business owners. So, you know, mostly homeowners, but we did get some renters to respond. Also, the far majority of respondents have identified as white or Caucasian, which I'm assuming also reflects the neighborhood, but again, I'm not completely positive on that. But 92.8% of respondents identified as white and Caucasian, and only 7.2% did not identify as white. Overall, we have 237 responses right now. And that is up from, sorry, there's a lot of text on this slide, but originally, so pre-election day and me going door knocking the past few weeks, we had 166 responses. So I went door knocking by myself on 5 different days for probably 10 hours total. And then I also went out with some of you all, as well as some block contact leaders, which was very effective. Definitely going with people was the most effective way to do it. But we also, at the Kingfield election day, at our tents, we had the survey, and we got, I think, 35 people to respond on election day alone. So that was highly effective. The door knocking, I didn't feel like it was extremely effective. I thought it was pretty time consuming for the results. But then when I look at the data, there was a 15.7% response rate. And I did go to a lot of low response areas, including Stevens, parts of Grand, and First Avenue. So for future surveys, I thought, maybe rolling it out at events and at the market like it was, I think is the most effective way. And maybe we can put it in newsletters as well if we end up printing that. But I'm not sure the vision for the rest of the survey, we may be done with it for now. So the actual results of the survey, the majority of respondents said that they have attended a Kfna event, 89.6%, while a lot less have volunteered at an event, donated, and have become involved in the Kfna board, or have even attended Kfna meetings. In a variety of responses, I did see people ask where these meetings take place and wanted to get involved that way. So my question was, how do we make the meetings more transparent? I don't know if it's on our website, or maybe we should promote that more. But how do we get people more involved with the actual planning and the behind the scenes work of Kingfield? Beyond Kfna, many respondents reported having informal relationships with their neighbors, like having a phone tree, WhatsApp group chat, or email list. And many also responded that they hold their own personal events, which are listed here, some 4th of July parties, book groups, etc. As for the what is most important to you in the neighborhood, I would say the vast majority of responses had safety in them. Safety, safety, safety just kept popping out. And I took screenshots of some responses and posted them here. And it's important to note that people put safety beyond policing, as we saw back here, what I underlined. But people also wrote safety with more police presence. So not everyone was for beyond policing. I'd say, there's more people saying beyond policing, but it was definitely a mix. So that's important to keep in mind. Safety was also the highest priority that people want Kfna to work on in the next 3 to 5 years. And many people suggested safety workshops, safer crosswalks, slower traffic, like we just saw with the Bikeway, more social services that prevent crime, informal sessions on crime prevention. So as we can see, safety is super complex. It involves policing and it involves crime, but it also involves transportation and traffic management. So this is a huge topic, which leads me to suggest that possibly, if this is something that you all would be interested in, maybe offering a community safety workshop for the neighborhood for the winter and spring could be an effective way to address this concern in the neighborhood. I did some very minimal research, and if this is something you all were interested in, I could do a lot more. But the Minnesota Peacebuilding Leadership Institute is an organization focused on restorative justice and healing. And they have a workshop called Introduction to Circles for Building Community Trust and Peace. That is something we could bring in. I found an organization called Hollaback, which has a variety of free online workshops, including bystander intervention in public spaces training. And then some other ideas would be de-escalation training, if we wanted to collaborate, with police or beyond police, mental health training, etc. Again, there's a lot of different ways we could take this if there's board interest in helping to develop it for the neighborhood. But beyond safety, of course, the survey shows a lot of other concerns in the neighborhood. Some of the big ones that stood out was affordable housing, which goes along with the Third Amendment that is now passed with rent stabilization. People are really concerned about keeping prices affordable in the neighborhood and also just learning more about affordable housing in general. Development was another big theme. There's a lot of respondents who are concerned about large-scale development in Kingfield, but also, again, there's a lot of people concerned about affordable housing. So there's kind of that balance there. Support of local businesses, sustainability and climate change. And then this was, like, I'd say one of the largest ones in addition to affordable housing and safety is more neighborhood events and engagement. A lot of people wrote combating isolation, which given the circumstances of the past year, with COVID, that is, just something inherent to the pandemic and to us not being able to have had a lot of events, but people were very much advocating for more events. Here are the rest of them. You can read them on your own time. But when we go to the question, if Kfna achieved neighborhood communication, census collection, voter registration, etc., the vast majority of respondents affirmed that we or you all did achieve these things, even if not everyone used them. So I saw yes, the majority of times, but I also saw I did not participate directly. I did not use these. We are privileged enough not to have used them. So it's super great that we did have these resources for people who needed them. And my question is, for the people who didn't participate, what resources can we develop for them that they will use? And then this goes to kind of what Sarah was talking about with what's going to be discussed in December, but what is the role of a neighborhood association taking a political stance? We had both people kind of chastising us for taking a stance and people supporting us and supporting that position. So it's definitely a both and I think that's left for the December meeting. But overall, there's a lot of positive affirmations for Kingfield. I can't tell you how many statements there are in the responses that, really praise and thank what Kfna is doing. So that is a thanks to all of you all and all the work you've done the past year. And lastly, I reached out to block contact leaders these past few weeks, asking them their interest in the winter activities that we had brainstormed. And the response rate has been extremely low. There has only been about 4 or 5 people who have responded saying that they are interested in helping lead some of these events. And the rest who have responded, which have been very few, have said they're too busy. But of those who have responded, the largest interest is in the holiday cookie swap. And then in February, sledding, the polar plunge, and the snowman competition. So this kind of sheds light on, I think we need some leadership from the board members to also spearhead some of these events if we're not, getting too much interest from block contact leaders. That is the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kenzie. That's a lot of information to synthesize and sort through. So I really appreciate your work on that. and for organizing it so well for to share out with us. So thank you. Yeah, we do have time. We've got a little bit of wiggle room in the agenda here. So I think I would love to hear what people have to say, if there's questions, comments that people have about this.
And just for a point of reference, we did do a survey in 2019 and we had 115 respondents. So we are definitely up in the survey responses for this year. And thanks a lot to Kenzie for her efforts and all of your efforts at the farmers market, door knocking, all of those things. It really did. We did not reach as many as we'd like to reach, but we more than doubled the number of people that we had respond to the survey.
I was wondering, Kenzie, if you could tell, like, were we more effective at reaching out to minority members of the community by door knocking or at events, or was there not a significant difference? Could you tell?
Yeah, so I think, let's see. Oh shoot. I'm gonna pull up the PowerPoint. I think before I went door knocking, there was going to the slide. We had reached 5.6% of renters, or 5.6% of respondents were renters. And then afterwards, 12.1% of respondents were renters. So there's a 6.5% increase from door knocking. And then as for diversity, 8 more people of color responded, which was a 3.4% increase. So I think door knocking was super effective in getting more diversity in the respondents.
We were also selecting Blacks, David, that we didn't have block contacts on, and we knew had rental properties that we probably weren't reaching. So.
Yeah, and I made the survey in Spanish too. And I did, when I door knocked, I talked to I think 4 Spanish speakers, and all of them denied my request for them to take it. So no one answered the Spanish survey. And the people who identified as Latino in their responses answered in English. So that was an interesting tidbit of the result of the survey.
It makes me think, and I can't comb through the new census data, but the last time I looked at census data, numbers in Kingfield, I think, were less than 3% of people self-identified as not speaking English very well. So.
I really appreciate the very specific efforts to try to reach our neighbors who rent and reach our neighbors of color. So I think that was really strategic, intentional. I mean, yes, door knocking takes time. It also was, like, for the most part, a big election doing door knocking in, which I would be curious if more people are apt to answer their doors during that time, or if they're like, a lot of people have been knocking on my door, I'm not going to answer it, type of thing. But I think even with people who decline to take the survey, I think it shows a lot when the neighborhood association shows up at your door wanting to talk to you and get your perspectives and ask what you think about a topic. So I think just that very act of us going out there and showing up in that way is huge, and something that I would like to do more of myself, and hope others on the board would be willing to join in that too. So I really appreciate your efforts to do that, Kenzie, and to get out there and do that, and board members who joined in on that as well. Yeah, are there any other questions? Kenzie, you kind of left us with a question of what are board members interested in kind of spearheading for future events, which kind of dovetails into our next agenda item, but I want to make sure if there's any other questions about survey results or comments that we get to those before we go into that.
Is the survey still open for a period of time? And if so, when do we stop collecting any answers?
The survey is still open right now. The strategic planning committee needs to meet to make a final decision on when we are in fact closing it. And I don't know, I've been gone the last week, but I don't think the strategic planning committee met this last week. So that will be forthcoming.
Kenzie, do you have any last questions or comments for us before we turn it over? I think Sarah LR, the next agenda item is yours. Or is that you too, Kenzie?
It's kind of both Kenzie and I. So Kenzie did outreach to the block contacts. I've done outreach on empty bowls. I would say that both of us had a lot of non-replies. And so I'm actually kind of shocked at how little response we got. So I don't know if people are just exhausted from the election. We're working hard on the election and now are just done for a while, but it was a pretty resounding, we have a very core team of empty bowls of about 15 people that I reached out to. None of them responded. As Kenzie said, I think our block contact list is close to 75 people. And we had one person say, take me off the list. Another who said, I'm too busy. And another one, and about 3 who said they're excited to do stuff. So it just sort of, I think, made both Kenzie and I wonder, like, what is going on right now? And what can we do now that is easy? I think there's a couple of options on the list, maybe one or two pre-holiday that are pretty easy to pull off. But to do anything major after the beginning of the year, we're going to need some additional volunteer leaders from the community. And so part of the challenge of that is selecting it. Do we select amongst ourselves? Does the board say, oh, I'm interested in this, and we do, we just go ahead and hope that someone will come along and do it? Or do we wait until after the beginning of the year and know that we have to do some quick planning?
Is empty bowls usually in February?
Empty bowls is traditionally the second Thursday in February. It usually starts planning in early October.
And then we did that last year, right? Empty bowls actually happened.
We did it, but we did it virtually.
Okay. And are you thinking this year you're going to do it again at MLK? Is that what you're hoping? But nobody's coming forward to plan it?
I put out a sort of laundry list to the past participants about this could be virtual like last year. This could be MLK Park drive-through. This could be find a new church partner. This could be pick up at a local restaurant. Like what interests you all, and haven't heard back. So right now I'm going to blame it on the election.
But you don't see it going back to how it was, at least this February, like in person at MLK?
My understanding from Peter is he believes that the park may be open, but they'll still probably be on packaged food rules. So no. So like us scooping out hot soup and having people sit down and eat it is very unlikely at the park this year.
What do you think we accomplished by doing that virtually? Because like when I think of empty bowls, I think of people mingling, talking together. Like the value in that is gathering. So like, is the planning and the volunteers needed to do that worth what we get out of a virtual or altered version of that?
I would say there's very little value in it if we don't have a community team planning it. You know, so what we got out of it last year is we wrapped it in with a neighborhood history trivia event. So it was an hour-long fun history education game night for the 35 to 40 people that attended.
And that was virtual.
Mm-hmm.
What are the numbers for people that typically go to empty bowls?
Anywhere between 500 to 800 is probably our top year.
Yeah. I mean, again, like what is the, I mean, that'd be great for 35 people, but you could just like set up an evening get together for 35 people as opposed to trying to like call it empty bowls virtually. Like, is there value in that for actually connecting community or having people meet?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know what the value is of things trying to continue. I mean, I think that that's all a personal choice, you know, in some ways about, do you persevere with name recognition through a pandemic, or, you know, do you just go, we're not doing anything? I mean, I think last year was sort of a desperation of people still needed something to carry them through, you know, in some ways. And I think no one ever thought that we'd be in it for February will be 2 years. So.
There is the fundraising piece too. I don't remember how many funds were raised last year and if it was significant versus other years. Do you remember, Sarah?
It was okay for how many people came. It was, we raised $5,000, $6,000 compared to between 10 and 15. I mean, so like looking at how many people attended, it was great, you know, and we ran it through Butter Bakery. People made donations there and bought soup and took it home and ate it. It has a lot of in its traditional form, it has a lot of different values. It has the bringing people together. It has the raising awareness of hunger. It has supporting affordable housing in our neighborhood. You know, do we pick one of the, you know, I guess I don't know what to tell you.
Do you think there'd be any value in doing like, encouraging community members, like doing empty bowls, having soup available at Butter, and saying like, on this day, we encourage community members to break bread with neighbors and get together in like small groups, so that we could still do like empty, it would be like, you know, people getting together within the community and we could still be promoting it, but it would be in person and neighbors would be getting together, but we wouldn't have like a virtual event.
We could. I mean, the question is, we can do anything we want. If we're not raising $10,000, is it worth, you know, like, is that part of the value that we're also looking at trying to do?
Yeah, and I was thinking a lot about getting, having like a donation drive too, right? So like part of it,
block by block.
Yeah, block by block, and then advertise it in the e-news and, you know, at Butter, and just say like, pick up your soup at Butter, and then invite your friends over in the neighborhood for a conversation about the neighborhood. And, you know, I mean, it would be definitely different in tenor, but it would be having like small empty bowls events at individuals' houses. I don't know. So we could still have the fundraising opportunity. I mean, I don't think we want to miss out on an opportunity to raise funds right now.
I think if we don't have volunteers step forward, we have to think of something like that will just take way less staff time.
Well, if we had a different place to do it besides a Minneapolis park, could you do, not everybody is bound by those food rules, correct?
Correct.
But do you feel like people would still be hesitant to come? I mean, I'm sure some people would, I'm sure some people wouldn't.
I don't know if we had Sisters Camelot pull up and cook soup and serve it out of a bus.
But it's February though. It's too cold. I don't want to go outside in February.
I don't know. It's November 10th and it's not cold yet. I mean, who knows what it will be? We've had snowstorms during empty bowls and we've had gorgeous weather. So, you know. So I think, you know, the question to back up a step is kind of where your guys' energy is. So where we started this conversation was winter block community building ideas. Those winter block community building ideas, including empty bowls, were taken to block leaders. Block leaders have come back with a couple of ideas, which Kenzie could review again. I think when we looked at the list, we said, yeah, like these two are for sures. We can pull these people, you know, Kenzie can pull these people together. We've done these events before. I think it was a holiday cookie swap and lighted up Kingfield. Were those the two?
Just the cookie swap, and then for February, the polar plunge, snowman, and sledding.
Okay, so
there's one person interested in the lights, but
okay,
only one.
So a cookie swap for sure, some winter activity thing, which is sort of a pretty easy thing to pull off once we have snow. You know, those two things can happen for sure. The others are dependent on, I guess, more leadership, more word to the neighborhood. Some of them are staff intensive, like empty bowls. Some aren't super staff intensive, like lighted up Kingfield, where we're just basically asking neighbors to do stuff. You know, so I think the question comes back to the board about what's the criteria for making stuff happen. And does anyone care enough about any of these things to say, yeah, I want to work on that to make sure that that thing happens?
Well, I feel like empty bowls, if we just don't do anything, it's just going to be that much harder to bring it back the next year, right? Like at least if it's out there and even if only 40 people participate, at least it's people hear it again and they hear that name and the idea of it. I mean, I feel like that's important, especially going forward and in the hopes that in the following year, we'll actually be able to do it as how we used to do it. So however that looks like this February, I don't know exactly, but I feel like it should be something. And the money we raise there gets split between us and Aliveness, is that right? And Beacon, is that how it works?
Last year, we split it between us for work that we had done with the unhoused population at the park and Nicollet Square, and I think we split it with Aliveness also. And that was a first time thing. You know, as I say that, Aliveness has a commercial kitchen that we could safely cook out of. I haven't asked them during COVID if we could use it. But, you know, they might let us take over their dining hall and serve soup to go. And so
I have a few thoughts. So with the funds going to Nicollet Square and potentially Aliveness, being two organizations in the neighborhood, I think maybe in the past, those organizations have been part of planning, but I'm wondering, what are they saying about this event? What do they want to see? What is, what can Kfna do to, to address any of the asks or needs that they might have right now? So that's one thought. Second thought is, it does seem like a reset of some sort with the event, particularly if we're not hearing back from original planning committees or planning committee members. And so I'm also just thinking about, this event has been about connection, about fundraising. We've also used it as a big recruitment event to not only, make sure people know about KFNA, get people involved. I mean, one year we were walking around with board recruitment flyers, getting people to apply for the board. So that leads me to think about, what is the role of fundraising and recruitment work groups in helping to envision or plan this event? And does it have to be in February? Could it be, this may be the too much, but if it's not a sole recruitment, if we don't look at it as necessarily a recruitment for the board, is this some sort of event that could be combined with our annual meeting so that it's like a bigger draw? We talk about, we want to get more people at our annual meeting. We've had low turnout. Do we combine it with a fundraiser, with something like this where people can vote for the board, learn about some community-based organizations, vote for board members, and do it more so in the spring when we can be outside, and have it also be like hopefully like an emerging from this awfulness and being able to be together in better weather, in better health type of thing. We don't have to decide on any of that right at this moment, but just some thoughts that maybe we want to continue talking about, or find out a way to talk about them in work groups too.
And then I was thinking, David, since you were saying the block model, the other original, so two things. The other original idea behind this was a 6 month, 6 months after National Night Out. So National Night Out is all about this block party. And this was like the Kingfield night in, like, it's been 6 months since your block party, come, we'll serve you dinner, and you can see all your neighbors at this event. So, I mean, it was also promoted as, see your neighbors. So yes, we could switch it internal. Sarah, to your point, although sometimes we have had people from Nicollet Square or Beacon Interfaith Housing on our planning team, really this is something that we did for them. And it started as a way to welcome them to the neighborhood and introduce neighbors to the property under the premise that all 42 youth that live in that building are our community and our neighbors. And so welcoming both the facility and the residents to the neighborhood is really how it started. So it hasn't really been with them, it has been for them.
I think like a lot of the comments about, fundraising and some of the continuing that event were really useful in the question that I kind of asked at the beginning of this conversation. But so Sarah, is that kind of like a hard no on doing it later in the spring, or like what are your thoughts on moving the timeline for something like this? Because that was an exhausting election and the holidays are coming and people are like, I can't do another virtual event personally. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm just out on virtual events.
Right. No, I think it's interesting to try to figure out how to do it differently. I think that there will be other things than empty bowls. I guess I'm sort of in Becky's camp here. We're doing something to continue the name
at
thought
the
that's a
regular
good
time of year is important. You know, we've already talked about we're doing with the SAP tap in March when the SAP flows, we're doing a pancake breakfast at the park. You know, I've always thought it was counterintuitive to hold a fundraiser with an annual meeting. And yet Lindale just did it fairly successfully. I think it's sort of weird to say, come volunteer and vote. And by the way, give us money. But, you know, I think recruitment needs to talk about, you know, how are they recruiting? I think we need to put a schedule together. I think we do need to find some ways for people to come together and do stuff. I just don't think it's going to be an 800-person sit-down dinner this year.
Do we have an event calendar on the drive that like outlines all of the regular yearly events and their dates?
No, we do it by year.
Like I don't know enough of that.
We do it year by year, and there's usually the regular ones and then a few get added, but typically in a non-COVID year, we do an event every single month, a fairly big event. And so normally I bring that to the December meeting. I can share a traditional calendar with you all after this meeting.
What does the volunteer committee normally do? Like, are they the ones who make the soup, or what is their role in making the event happen?
So the volunteer team has a sort of like a logistics component. There's a whole bowl making component. So in a traditional year, we find artists and pottery studios, and we have throwdowns, and we get clay donated and throw bowls. And so we're promoting the making of the bowls. And then we have paint-a-bowl events where the community's glazing the bowls, and the volunteers organize those and staff those. And then there's promotion of the actual event. It's a 4-hour event with 500 to 800 people coming through it, you know, so there's people working stations and serving soup and running bread and cutting food and taking money. And we have about 70 volunteers that work that day. It's a huge
Got
day.
it. Yeah. Another idea is what Lindale is doing. Is they're having a soup giveaway at the beginning of December, and they got donations from a company called Simples, I think it's called, which like the whole model of the business is donating like food in order. I don't even know. I can find their website, but we're gonna be just giving out like quarts of soup, so maybe that could be an alternative, because that would reduce the necessity for bowls and for all that volunteer work, like doing something small scale now, and then next year, you know, reamping it. That's just an idea.
So just for the sake of time here, I'm wondering, Sarah, how do you want to close out the conversation? Do we need more time to discuss, or where do you want to go from here?
I'm not here. I guess I'm not hearing. I think I have to do outreach to our old team and say, did this get lost in the election shuffle? And hopefully it did. And there's some sort of clear path that comes out of it for empty bowls, at least. I think it's important to do something. If all those people go away, it's going to be something super simple. You know, that might be figured out in January.
Sarah, I'm happy to help work on this. And I know Eleanor and Lori have helped a lot in the past, and I can reach out to them and talk to them and see if they're willing to do something more this year, and whatever it looks like.
kind of help be in charge of it and take over some of that. So I'll ask those two when I see them.
That would be great. It is kind of your crowd and your corner of the neighborhood that's taken real ownership of it. So,
and I know I can get people to help, it's just a matter of figuring out what we want it to look like. And I have a few other ideas about that I can just talk to you about in the next day or two.
So for that, I think Becky and I will talk. I think Kenzie's gonna continue with figuring out a holiday cookie swap for sometime in December. I think we can see if a few more block contacts come in, but that might be it for the pre-holiday events. We did just kick off our waves of thanks for healthcare workers this week because someone happened to bring in a stack of postcards that they'd held since last year. So we have a presence of that at Butter and Color Wheel and Royal Grounds, and a distribution to Abbott Northwestern Hospital. So I guess we have a not in person, but a November happening, which is, I encourage all of you to drop into those 3 shops, buy a cup of coffee, write some cards on the free postcards and leave them, and we'll deliver them to a hospital for you for healthcare workers. In December, we'll do a cookie swap and we'll figure out the rest, if we can figure out empty bowls from there.
I have a quick question. Last year, when did the anti-racism workshops take place?
February? March?
We had a few throughout the year, late summer, fall, spring we did, or more like January through May we did Safety Beyond Policing, which had some components of anti-racism in it.
Teens weren't some of them outside, so it must have been warm. I don't remember when it was, but it was.
Oh. Yes. Well, the ones with the Theater of Public Policy were summer. I was thinking of that when the woman came, the psychologist, Sarah. I feel like that was spring.
That was spring. The From Fear to Something workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which that is something that I'm interested in, Kenzie, and I'll follow up with you on, is just thinking about what type of workshops we might think about planning for this winter, I suppose, with people mentioning de-escalation and things like that. I'd love to talk to you more about that. Okay. Yeah, I think we're behind here in time. So is it okay if we move on to the next thing here, Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so next we've got work group updates and then our closing, and that's it for tonight. So for work group, could I have someone from strategic planning give us a quick update? It looks like KDB is the chair, but she is not here tonight. So BJ, Chris is not here either. Brighton or Josh, are there any updates that you want to share?
We haven't had another meeting since then. I think that's probably something we're going to be scheduling soon. Josh or BJ, do you have any? Is BJ still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you came off my screen.
No worries. No, I think in our last executive committee meeting, Chris said he was going to reach out to Katie about scheduling a meeting.
To me, the questions for that group are, do we close the survey? How do we announce the results of the survey? And then what is done with those results and how is that communicated to the public? I guess that's sort of what I would like covered at the next meeting.
Okay. Recruitment. That's David R., L'Oreal, Jerome, and myself. David R., do you want to go?
Yeah, we haven't met in a while, but I imagine that we should be setting up a meeting for discussion of the annual meeting, which I cannot believe is coming up in terms of when we want to have it. So I think it would be appropriate to meet maybe next month and figure out that timeline. But I do think that we're going to have to, I'm going to be interested to see what's going to happen going into the new year to see if we're going to actually be able to do an in-person meeting. Sarah, Sarah LR, do you have any idea whether or not an in-person annual meeting would seem likely? Or when we might know?
We're just stuck by the same thing. You know, if we can do it outdoors, sure. If we don't want to risk doing it outdoors, you know, we are at the whim of the park board.
And they don't have a timeline that we know of for like announcing whether or not the facilities would be open for us?
They keep saying they're opening, but then they keep pushing it off, and then they keep saying they're only open for their own stuff. But I see every other park in the city had something for Halloween, except for Painter and King. So I don't know if the directors get to choose. I mean, I'm really unsure. So I think you guys should pick a date, and I think you should pick one that hopefully could be kind of warm. And we should try to figure out how to, you know, do it outdoors if we can.
Okay.
I will say that we are reworking on our office COVID plan procedure. Position. No, our procedure, and I believe, going to be opening the office to small groups of visitors who are working on a project or a program, who are masked or follow our guidelines in the office. So I think that like there might be a potential that the board could gather, but if we're going to have an annual meeting and we really want other people to come, it would have to be outdoors. So.
What about our old friends at the Center for Performing Arts? Is there any chance we could use some space there?
I don't know. I don't know what their procedures are either. I don't know the food. I don't know if they have gorgeous wood floors that people dance on and you can't drink on them, or.
Yeah, fair enough.
I haven't been in there yet.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I'll reach out though, probably next month to the recruitment group and get everyone's thoughts on time to meet.
So I do say that we are doing some research into printing a newsletter. And we did some surveying of different neighborhood groups who they're printing with. I had Kenzie reach out to all the printers trying to get specs. And so we just need to sit and like go through that material and make an outreach plan. But I think that we really have to get back into print. And so I'm looking at a February publication date, which is probably an early January due date. Just to take that into consideration. And because printing and mailing is so expensive, we're probably looking at a late May publication. So if you want to take that into consideration, something that would also promote like Porch Fest.
Have we ever worked with Seven Corners Printing in St. Paul before? Do you know them? They're really good and they're union. So do we work with union printers typically?
Oh, it has never been one of our criteria.
All right.
Okay, fundraising updates, Todd, Alice, Becky, David S.
I can give a short update. So Sarah LR wrote a draft letter for an appeal for a year-end sort of to previous donors. We have all read it and revised that, I think, shrunk it down and gotten a little tighter. Right now, it asks for people to use a QR code or to use a text message, the 44321 text to donate. I don't know if people have a strong opinion about including a remittance envelope. That is an interesting question, or whether there's a stamp on it or not, but it'd be interesting to know how many times we do get checks versus people going online and donating. So I don't know if we have that information from 2020. It is also Give to the Max Day on November 18th, coming up in 7 days and a couple hours. And Kfna, we do have a Give to the Max or Give MN page. So if you do see people sharing that, if you use social media, it wouldn't be the worst to share your relationship with the Kingfield board and our link. Looks like we have to change a couple dates from 2020 to 2021 on that website. And while it isn't the big part of our strategy, it certainly is something we want to make sure that we're talking about on that day. If that's, I know that's big in certain groups. Other than that, I know Todd has some strategic ideas around events and other asks outside of what we usually have done. And so I can't report on those. But what do people think about, do people send checks, Sarah, or anyone else?
Not a lot.
Do you do the envelope, or do you, or do you include are the people who send checks the same folks who have an envelope and a stamp? And so I say, if you want to send, this is the address.
We have not included an extra return envelope for a long time,
Sure.
For like 4 or 5 years, so we still get 20 checks in the mail. I would say more come in online now.
Yeah.
Do we have a Venmo account associated with our bank account?
Yes.
So we could put that in the letter as well?
Yes.
Or maybe it already is, or maybe that's in there.
Yeah, I think, Dave, I think you're right. We need, we should finalize that language and get that on our Give MN page, fundraising page quickly, even if our letter's not printed and mailed.
And I think the Give MN page is, the Give MN page is good, and I think should just stay very positive and focusing on the things that we do. And some of that might just be changing dates, but yeah.
Okay, I thought we had last year's letter on it. Typically, I put the request letter. So as long as that doesn't look super out of date. Okay, I can look at it tomorrow.
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you want me to post on our social media for Give to the Max?
Yeah, let me make sure our page is updated before you do.
Yeah.
But then, it is a good time to be kind of hammering that, even if it's not your main pillar.
Right. Yeah. And then as a reminder, the more that you guys see it and share it and like it and say that you're on the board and you donate to this organization, the better it is.
Great. Thanks, fundraising folks. Okay, so we'll move into our closing here, which is just where we go around one by one and in a minute or less, talk about what exciting or interesting things we're seeing happening in the neighborhood. What are you hearing from neighbors? If there's any sort of questions, concerns, ideas, how are you moving forward with your commitments to justice, or if there's anything else you would like to share with the board. So we'll go around here. Becky, it looks like you're first in line. Can you kick us off with this?
Sure. I've had, we didn't do it last year, but in years past, there's probably about 6 blocks, 7 blocks Thanksgiving morning, we do what we call a turkey trot, and we just all meet on a corner and people walk or run around the lake. And historically, we've come back to my house for mimosas. So I think we might be doing that again this year, which should be fun.
That sounds like fun. Alice?
It looks like Grand Avenue may be open. At least I got a text to that effect. I'll have to go out and see what it looks like, but that might be pretty exciting. Although we've all enjoyed having it shut, we really had a great Halloween. The kids did a big parade and they were able to go down the middle of Grand Avenue, which was really fun. So we had 10 times as many kids as we usually have. So Halloween was very fun here. So in some ways it'll be sad when Grand Avenue is open, but.
Thank you, Alice. Josh?
Let's see. I've been following redistricting stuff a lot. They had a drafting meeting for awards today. They started at the north end of the city and they haven't made it down to us yet. Based on the draft maps I've seen submitted from the public so far, I don't think Kingfield's going to get affected by the redistricting, but I'll keep an eye out on where that goes. And then in personal news, next week I'll be traveling for my day job to Denver, and I think that's the first time I've traveled anywhere since the before time, so that'll be exciting.
Thanks, Josh. Brighton?
I've been getting amped up for winter bicycling. My husband and I just hosted a Alley Cat scavenger hunt bike race out of our house that was exclusively around Kingfield with 20 stops around the neighborhood. We had lower turnout than we hoped, but we had about 15 people do that. So I'm kind of getting excited about hopefully starting to organize some more cycling events, and got my winter biking boots and mittens out. So that's fun.
Thank you. David R.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that Grand Avenue was busy with trick-or-treaters, because my house, we got exactly 0 trick-or-treaters, which was a huge bummer. And actually, no, you know what? We got 2 trick-or-treaters. I forgot. But it was a bummer because we had a bunch of candy to give away. I was like, oh, I guess we're not doing trick-or-treat this year. So good to know that they were all on Grand Avenue. That makes sense.
Sorry, David. I'll come trick-or-treating at your house, okay? Okay, David S.
We did have to run after trick-or-treaters and try and give them candy. They were very bummed that all we had left were almond joys, which I think just it's an acquired taste. I've actually been really excited about seeing some of the new bike lanes, especially as you get north on First Avenue. And that's been great as I go into the office to be alone in a large office, but to see the new work that the city is putting into them, and they are safe and awesome. So that's something that's been great in October.
Thanks, David. BJ?
Neighborhood stuff. I'm excited about the new restaurant at 40th and Lyndale. I have yet to go, but I know they have been booking up reservations. Becky has been, and I know Dave has been as well. So I'm very excited to get there. And it was really nice being out in election day. I got to spend a lot of time with Kenzie, which was awesome. And it was good to see neighbors out, and it felt much different and better than it did for the election last year, just in traffic within the park. There were a lot more people willing to stop and have coffee, and it was a good day despite what people may think about the election results. It was good to see people in Kingfield out and voting.
Thanks, BJ. I'm up next. Yeah, I'll echo. I enjoyed the positive vibes at the Kfna polling party. That was a fun day. Continuing with the Grand Avenue theme, I have really been enjoying biking my kid to school on Grand Avenue because you can go the whole way without having to stop, which going from 36th to 43rd without having to stop on a bike is super awesome. And especially when there's a young kid biking. So I've really appreciated the new design of that street. And another fun thing, I met a neighborhood seamstress today. I've had a pile of stuff that I've been wanting to get mended for like, I don't know, a year. And finally today I looked at it and said, today is going to be the day. And I searched in the Facebook page and got connected with someone, brought it over there, and I'm going to get stuff repaired. So I'm super excited about that. And it's someone here in the neighborhood. Sarah LR, do you want to go?
Sure. So I just put a link in the chat, which is a how to connect to your new kingfield.org email. We've been in tech nightmare, trying to set up a nonprofit Google workspace and get functioning emails for you all. So please, please, please try to look at this before the end of the week so we can test them and make sure that we can safely share your kingfield.org addresses with the public so the public can communicate directly with all of you. Two, I just want to, Brighton, I want to connect with you about a scavenger hunt. We've actually been brainstorming doing a scavenger hunt in Kingfield and Lindale neighborhoods as a spring fundraiser. So we should talk about that totally.
Yeah, I could bring you in the clues and the addresses that we used, but my husband loves making scavenger hunts. So I have the best volunteer for you.
Yeah, and I haven't done one in the neighborhood since Waldog, so since 2010, but
Farmstead Bike Shop has done one every year. It's called the Anti-Social Scavenger Hunt or something silly. But like if you go to the stops and post on their Instagram, they give out like patches and stuff. So they have done that 2 years in a row too.
Excellent.
So that's also a good model.
Super cool.
Thank you. Kenzie?
Yeah, I have to echo BJ. I really enjoyed Election Day, even though it was very cold. I think that was like the coldest day of the week, and I drank like 7 cups of coffee, and then I didn't feel too good. But it was really fun, and it was great meeting a lot of neighbors and spending time with BJ and Sarah and other folks.
Thank you. And Andrew, I'm not sure if you're still there or not, but if you would like to share anything, we'd love to have you do that.
Sure. I have to admit, I've been doing some other things than listening to the meeting, but I have actually, it has all entered my ears at a minimum, and I appreciate you all tolerating an audience. It was interesting and curious. Thanks.
Thanks for being here. All right, that closes out our meeting. Thanks everyone for being here, and hope to see you out in the neighborhood before our next board meeting.
Thanks,
Good
Sarah.
night.
Thanks, Sarah.